Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning to all. Okay, today we are going to learn about PHP. So what is PHP, right? For the very beginning, for everyone to know that, well, first of all, PHP is a backend or server-side languages and it lives in the web browser. PHP is a backend scripting or server-side language where we can write our backend code. Okay, and what is PHP stand for? Okay, PHP stand for Hypertext Preprocessor, right? And then it's the most popular backend web programming. And actually, Facebook is currently powered by by PHP as well. And then around 79% of worldwide globally was based on PHP, right? So it's a very important languages for most of web developer because more than 79% using PHP programming in their website. Right, so that's become a very interesting for everyone to know about PHP. Right, so this is a content that we're going to look in PHP. We start with number one on introductions, followed by syntax, variables, operator, conditional statement, loops, array, function, and form. So the last part is the form that will enable you to develop an application with PHP and connect it with a database or MySQL. Right. For the first one, I tried to give some very brief idea about PHP, starting with what you should already know on PHP. What is PHP? What the PHP can do? Why PHP? And so on. Right. So if you're looking into the slide, it's PHP is a server-side scripting language. Before this, you learn about JavaScript, CSS, and HTML. It's a client-side scripting language. But for PHP, it's another one that called a back-end or server-side scripting. Right? It's a very powerful tool for making a dynamic or interactive website. Okay, it is really widely used compared with the other languages. You can imagine 79% of World Wide Web was based on PHP. Right, this is the things that you already learned, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And it's a client-side scripting language. And PHP initially called personal home pages, okay? But they changed to what we call a hypertext preprocessor. All right, it's a widely used and is execute in the server. Means that if you make some error, they will return error. They will you are unable to see the output when you catch into an error. Okay, so what PHP can do, number one, is generate a dynamic page content, and it can create, open, read, write. Okay, this is normally you will be explore some word that call or acronym that call CRUD: create, read, upload, and delete. Okay, this is part of the CRUD. But in other words, I mentioned about create, open, read, write, almost the same like create, read, upload, and delete. Okay, PHP can collect form data and can send and receive cookies. Right. Of course, you can do some CRUD here as well. Create, read, or upload and delete in your database that connect to MySQL. Right. So why PHP? Because it's very powerful languages and it support most of programming tasks. Okay. Right. This is something that I skip. All right. If you look into this cartoon, you see. Imagine that this is a kind of user. Hello server. I would to see a HTML page, and the server will give you hello client. Here's the HTML page, and just give a very straightforward concept. But if you're looking into another cartoon, you see when the user asks server, which is a client web browser, asks a server page, it may take some time for the server to return the result. So that's why it mentioned a hello client, just a second, okay, just a second. I need to do some work, okay. The work, it means, is referring to the PHP interpreter. That's why I need to read PHP pages and do tasks before I can send them. So this is the one that makes some delay with you dealing with PHP programming. Okay, this is the architecture when you have a client through a web browser, and then they will interact with server, and then the server will go to the PHP interpreter. Inside the interpreter, they have a file system, database, and also certain post protocol that called mail server. Okay, so this is the how the PHP works. And this is another architecture to show how it works. Number one, it will send information. Number two, will return the HTML document file. And number three, when the server requests, number four actually, requests programming languages that related with web PHP, it will need PHP interpreter to serve what the server or what the client needs based on URL or client requirements, and then it will look into what we call a server page document. Under that, you have a PHP script and also database. That's why it gives you the process 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 until 8. You see, request and send it HTML and and number 4, second request that come with a PHP codes, and then it will need interpreter and also database and return back with number 7 process and give back to number 8. That's the way how the PHP works on architecture. Right, so if you're looking into PHP, you need to execute all your codes with .php extensions. Okay, so without PHP extension, the server will not know that whether you are coding with PHP or not, right? So that's the requirements. Right, what is PHP file? PHP file actually is contain a text that can have a HTML code. You can put also JavaScript code and PHP code. It means that very interesting here. You can put all languages that you learned previously, and you can save it as a .php. So this is a quite advantageous that have in PHP, in which you can combine all the file format into one single file extension that called .php. So what you need to do, of course, you have to do option number one, web server on hosted server. Website on the hosted server. Okay, so that will be option number one. If you want to know about server programming or PHP programming. Number two, you may install PHP on your computer. Means that it takes some times for you to download PHP and install it in your computer. Number three, the best option, set up PHP on your own PC. In this case, you might use a simpler one that called XAMPP or MUM for Macintosh, and other than that is like Worm server, Aprillium server, Zen server, and so on. There are free web server for you to use. So option number one, you have to subscribe a web hosted server. There's a few for free, like 000 hosted. I can't remember the name, but along this way I will let you know about it. Number two, install PHP on your computer. But if you choose option number two, you also need to install MySQL. You have to install Apache and so on. That takes some times for you to do it. But number two is the best option for web server administrator. Let's say if you want to become a web server administrator, professional one, so you have to choose option number two. If you're going to test programming code or just for this class or courses, you can choose option number three, right? So, or option number one. Right, option number one, you can go through this particular slide. You can see you can choose hosted server. In case you can use 000webhost.com, which support PHP. Another one you have to request from our school server, GMM server. This is for SCSV student server, right? So that's the way how to choose option number one. Option number two, you have to install PHP along with Apache and MySQL, and this is the most powerful way to run actual web server environments. Okay. This is number three. You use third-party software, but this is for development only. And bear in mind that this is not secure. But for project like this class, you can use this option number three, right? You can use XAMPP server, MUM server, and so on. Okay. So this is a script a slide for web account, but I'll skip this. Okay, skip this. They are talking about transfer file. You can use FileZilla tutorial. If you choose option number 1, 2, and 3, you still can use FileZilla tutorial. FileZilla is an application for you to transfer file. When you do the programming, let's say you are using Atom, or maybe you are using VS Code, you are going to develop your programming in directory. So you need to use some file transfer protocol application to upload it on the server. So FileZilla is one of the file transfer protocol that can be used to transfer all your files into actual server or maybe a hosted server. All right. So this is the screen for XAMPP server. When you install a XAMPP server, the control panel will look like this. It shows that MySQL is running, FileZilla is running, Tomcat is running. You don't need a Tomcat, but when you install XAMPP or MUM, you will see this. Normally XAMPP, you will see this output. Normally Apache MySQL is the most required or needed for PHP programming. So this is the how they look like. Okay, all right. So that's the very interesting introduction of PHP, and I start my video here for a while. I will go